How about this?
Oh, we'll have
We can't spare.
We'll have to share one.
Bring it for now, just one done.
If we can get one more, then at least we can just have on 2 tables.
Good.
In fact, they told me that it'd be show format.
The last panel, I think we have to be at the podium.
How can it be at a podium? It's a chat show format. They told me. There's no
Oh, no,
speeches.
they said really?
That's what they told me. They said no speeches. Remember?
Then they definitely need to have another microphone.
I know. Wajahat can wing it. You can speak. You can speak all day. If you let me know.
You don't want that right now.
Reputation.
You don't want that right now. I can filibuster.
You're on the mic.
You're on a line.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Come on, wake up, Chicago. Assalamu alaikum. There you go. Can I ask you all while we wait for some microphones, because apparently there's more microphones coming, otherwise it's just me talking for the next hour, which would be wonderful. Can I ask you all at the back, on the sides, to get up and please walk forward and come sit in the front of the room? Because I hate sitting in big rooms where everyone's sitting in far corners. We're all brothers and sisters. We can sit together. You've all worn deodorant, I'm sure. Some of you. Wajahat hasn't, I can say from sitting here. So if you can all move forward, and hopefully if more people arrive, they can sit in the back. And I believe we're waiting for some microphones. We're going to start without microphones, I think. Should we start without microphones and see what happens? And we can yell and share the mic and do whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, my name is Mehdi Hasan. It's a pleasure to be here at this ISNA convention in Chicago, back in Chicago. Feels like I was just here the other day. Time flies. Good to have you here at this panel. Fascinating subject for us all today. The title of the panel is Finding al-Furqan, Truth, Lies, and Alternate Facts. Thank you, Kellyanne Conway, for the title. We are going to be talking about social media in particular and about information. We live in a social media age. Let's have a show of hands. Can everyone raise their hands? Everyone raise your hands in the air. Everyone up in the air. Okay, now, put your hand down. Everyone keep your hands up, and put your hands down if you're on Twitter. If you are on Twitter, put your hands down. If you're on Facebook, put your hands down. Ooh, a few stragglers. If you're on WhatsApp, put your hands down. Okay, we got an elderly gentleman and a young kid here, still living in 1996, mashallah. If you're on Instagram, put your hands down. Snapchat. Oh, he's gone. I got rid of the kid. Uncle there has still got a hand up. No Snapchat for you. Okay. Oh, there's more over here. Okay, so we've got about 6 people in the room who I have no idea what they do in their evenings, weekends, spare time, but they have no access to social media. Bichare. So my point being is we're all on it, whether we're young, old, male, female, immigrant, non-immigrant. We are obsessed with our phones, our communications, getting information from all over the place. But what kind of information? That's what I want to talk about today. What are our sources of information? How can we tell real news from quote-unquote fake news? How dangerous is the online space, shall we say, to Muslims, especially young Muslims? I want to cover a lot of stuff in the limited time that we have, especially since we're starting late and waiting for microphones. And I want to have a panel discussion, but I do want to get your questions, comments, criticisms, but not speeches at some stage during this 1 hour. Let me introduce my panel. To my right is Wajahat Ali, New York Times contributor, former TV anchor, attorney, playwright, co-author of the landmark 2011 report Fear Inc., The Roots of the Islamophobia Network in America. To my left is Mariam Sobh, actress, award-winning broadcast journalist based here in Chicago, currently combining her background in comedy and news with weekly online videos, tackling various current affairs issues from a lighter perspective. And to her left, Alex Kronemer, co-founder of the Unity Productions Foundation, which produces films. I'm sure many of you have seen many of his films about Islam and Muslims for mainstream television, has an active social media presence. His newest film is the upcoming Sultan and the Saint, the amazing untold story of the meeting between Francis of Assisi and the Sultan of Egypt, which helped end the Crusades. It's going to be broadcast on PBS in December. Quick other plug, I believe it's also being screened tomorrow in the main hall here at ISNA at 1:30 p.m. So do check it out. Give him your support. Give an applause to all our panelists. So I'm going to kick off, Mariam, with you. How do you think, just a general opening question, how do you think Muslim Americans have tended to use social media in the current climate? What kind of aspects of the use of Twitter and Facebook, etc., do you think are good, bad, you worry about, not worry about?
Well, I think I'm one of the Xennials. I'm on the edge of the Gen X and the Millennials. So I remember when we didn't have all
Chen
this
was
stuff.
it on?
So I remember before we had all this
set this up?
technology, and it was really hard when you had Muslim identity, and who are you, and who can you connect with? And now with the advent of the internet and all these platforms that we have, you're able to connect. You're able to find people who have the same viewpoints as you. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad, because you can validate a lot of negative behaviors and you can reinforce those through these platforms. As far as my preferred choice of platform that I like to use, I like Facebook a lot, because I feel that you're able to connect with people. Whereas Twitter, I call it the passive-aggressive place, where you can kind of say things and be mean, and you don't really have to respond. I don't know, stand up for yourself in a way. But the good, the bad, there's so much. I have kids. I have two daughters, and I will not let them be online probably till they're 21. And I think I've succeeded so far. 10 and 7. But I think, why? Why do you say that?
21? Are you kidding me?
Okay, maybe 18. We'll lower it a little bit. But the thing is, because I see a lot of the things that have been happening online. If we're talking from like an Islamic perspective with Muslim children, I mean, there's so much disgusting stuff that's out there that you cannot avoid, and it's there. And I just worry about how you can protect innocent eyes from seeing these things. And then in terms of like the different characters that come online in the Muslim community, for example, you have those instant fatwas, you have the Google scholars, you have the people who are projecting their problems on you. There's just a lot of information to take in. And I mean, maybe this is just posing another question. How do you draw the line, and where do you draw the line when it comes to these?
If you had to answer the question, has it been a force for good or a force for evil? Has it contributed more to our knowledge, information, better communications, better relationships, or has it led to more online bullying, harassment, the spread of Islamophobia, radicalization? Where would you sit in that debate?
I would say 50-50.
Okay. Alex?
Are you asking me
Yeah, you can pick up from
good
there.
or bad?
Yeah.
Well, I would probably, I have a white beard, so maybe my answer is predictable, but I probably would lean more to the bad than to the good. I mean, I think that certainly the connectiveness that we get through social media is, well, at one level, value. But at another level, and maybe more importantly, I think it's leading to the tribalization of the world and of America. and of the Muslim community itself. I don't mean Muslims versus everybody within the Muslim community. You're seeing a lot of tribalization. The thing that makes social media work, of course, is appealing to people's biases. You know, when you tell people things that they like to hear, they sign up for your feed, they go to your Facebook page, they like you, and so forth. Now, my name is Alex Kronemer. I'm a white guy, so maybe some of you have guessed I converted to Islam. I wasn't born a Muslim. And the thing that attracted me, this is 30 years ago, the thing that attracted me to Islam really was its universal spiritual message. And I was told all the time when I was first learning about Islam that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came for all of mankind, not just for Muslims. You know, and that was really a very strong draw, and I think that's, for me, one of the heartbeats of Islam that attracted me to it. In the world that we are now in, I think, you know, we have to ask ourselves, are we ourselves contributing to this tribalism that is separating us from others, that's making this universal message not only more particularistic just to Muslims, but certain types of Muslims within the Muslim space. Okay. So with the white beard and the oldest one on the panel, I'm saying no. Okay,
well, let me ask, Wajahat was nodding along and as Alex spoke. What do you do about it if you do recognize the inherent problems associated with Facebook, Twitter? It's not as if you're King Canute standing against the tide. You can't stop this stuff. I think Facebook has 1.7 billion active users. It would be the biggest country in the world if it was a country. You're not going to stop, especially young people, from immersing themselves in the latest forum, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's whatever it is. I can't even keep up. I'm old. What do you do about it?
So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. That was amazing. Thank you for that enthusiastic response. Really appreciate it. That was awesome. Very overwhelming. That was like a Pakistani standing ovation. Fantastic. That's like a Pakistani compliment. It was, you did not do that bad.
And you haven't even spoken yet.
Yeah, we haven't even spoken. They're like, not bad. Keep it up. We're all moderate Muslims here, which is, I think, either an alternative fact or reality. We'll find out. But look, social media, I just find it so amusing when people say, you got to shut down social media. I'm like, good luck. Social media is a tool. And a tool can be either used well or it could be used with a malicious intent, right? It depends on the intent of the user. So, you know, when it comes to kids, what's so funny is people are like, oh, we got to keep the kids away from the social media. It's like we got to keep the kids away from the internet, the intertubes. We got to protect them and save them. I'm like, dude, your kid is like speaking in HTML, all right? You're not going to teach your kid Urdu or Hindi, but they tweet, they upload, they download, they Snapchat, they WhatsApp, they Instagram, they poke, some of them the more than others, astaghfirullah. Pray for your children. I poked my way into marriage. That's how I got Sarah to marry me, through attrition, many pokes. Too soon? My bad. But in honesty, kids these days are speaking in this language, connecting with themselves and the world through these multiple channels, right? And it is frightening because ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the alt-right, white supremacists, and extremists have weaponized social media. It's the tip of the spear when it comes to hate for recruitment and propaganda. But the good news is the following, is that these people are very small. It's a small number of people, very interconnected, but very organized. The problem is that the vast majority of us, which I would say like 96% of humanity, are the flabby, moderate majority.
The silent majority.
The silent.
Isn't the problem that a lot of people you're identifying make the most noise online?
That's it. That's true. And it's
one of them managed to get himself elected president of the United States.
And yeah, no, really. We have a troll as president who uses his, as commander-in-chief, he uses the bully pulpit of Twitter. He actually called, talking about journalists, he called Joe today, what he goes, dumb as rocks, and then Mika, what did he say?
I forgot to check on his Twitter
It's just so much,
today.
mashallah. It's just so much alternative facts.
Okay, so before we move on, what's your advice, given you recognize the problem? Do you have advice?
Yes, I do have advice. You have two choices. Okay, you can either hide yourself in a small little cocoon and drink chai for the rest of your life and pretend that the world passes you by. Awesome. You can try that out. You can actually succeed in Chicago in pulling that off. But for most of us, you need to be equipped with the strategies and tools to use these tools in a meaningful way.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, I'll say is in responding to trolls, because you asked us how to do that, how do you respond to trolls? The way most Muslims respond, and in fact most people respond on social media is, that person gave me a fatwa and called me a kafir, I have to tweet against him, I have to. That person said Pakistani biryani is better than Hyderabadi biryani, I have to respond.
It's outrageous, Clint.
It's outrageous talk. Ignoring is a response. Let me repeat this. If you choose to ignore, that's a response. Also, and we'll get into this later as the day goes on, but most Muslims and most minorities and the people who get it worse, what's the group that gets it the worst online? You know what? Anyone know?
Women.
Women. Nobody gets it worse than women. And we can talk about the safe space you have to create, but when it comes to Muslims in particular, I say Muslims respond like Daffy Duck. Okay? Someone said something against me, I'm gonna get angry, I'm gonna huff and puff. That's the tweet. It's not even words. Exclamation points, and the way to respond, especially as a Muslim, with the stereotypes that we have, is I ask you to respond like Bugs Bunny. I get trolled all the time, you get trolled all the time. We like compare each other's trolls. The top two troll commands I get is the following. Go back to where you came from, number one. And number two, pardon me for saying this, but it's like, you should go have sex with an animal, especially with Muslims. And for some reason, it's always goats and camels only. And so how do you respond to that? Muslims are not expected to be funny or witty. We're dour, we're mean, we're brown, we're angry, we're black. Arr. The way I respond is like Bugs Bunny. All right, so don't be Daffy Duck, be Bugs Bunny. I'll finish on this.
Okay.
Be 2 steps ahead, be funny, be witty. When people say, and it's social media so everyone sees it, go back to where you came from. What I say is the following. You want me to go back to my mother's womb in Los Altos Hospital in Bay Area, California? The real estate is small, but I'll try. I did that tweet, went viral. And when they said, have sex with animals, I'm like, why only goats and camels? Why are you such a hater? And by the way, I'm not for bestiality, but if you're obsessed with that, go for it. I did this, and the audience sees it, and they see that you didn't get rattled, you didn't lose your cool, you responded with wit, you didn't get upset, and they turn over and you win them over.
Okay.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, Wajahat just got himself banned from all future ISNAs, but that's fine. You can add to it there.
I'm leaving this.
Takbir. Alex, go, and then Mariam.
Just to make it a more interesting panel, let me just push back again
Yeah, please.
on this point, just to say the following. Okay, so in the film that we made, The Sultan and the Saint, which some of you may see tomorrow, we bring in neuroscience into it. We had a neuroscientist really talk about the origins of hate and where it is in the brain. And the problem is that those trolling comments, those negative comments, stimulate a part of the brain that is more primal and more powerful than the part of the brain that responds to positive things.
Yeah.
So it takes just one really ugly comment, and I think the ratio is 1 to 21. It takes 21 positive touches to overcome one negative one. So the trolls, on these platforms,
advantage.
they have really, and I just wanted
And
to make
anonymity, of course.
anonymity
which
and the
helps.
power, because they go right to the part of your brain that makes you upset, that makes you fearful, that makes you aggressive, and makes you respond. And so it continues.
Mariam, you do these online videos now. What has been your experience and reaction? How positive an experience have you found that, given what Alex says, and being a Muslim woman online?
Well, I think it depends on the topic. So I had a video that I posted just about the history of Muslims in America. And it first started maybe like 20,000 views. And then overnight, all of a sudden, it went to 500,000 views. And the comments were just coming in, and I couldn't keep up with them. And it was just like negativity on steroids. People were telling me to go eat bacon, putting little piggy faces. So I tried to respond and say, I love bacon. I don't know why you think I'm offended. And I realized somehow this video had gone on to some probably other site, some right-wing site, and it just took off, and people started getting more and more insane. So what I started doing, my way to combat trolls is sometimes to block their comments or to delete them. So like my YouTube page, I closed comments for a while just to let things settle down and then open it back up. And I noticed that Facebook has a horrible policy at blocking people. I had death threats. I had people saying, you know, where I'm gonna come
Twitter's
chop your
even
head
worse.
off. And this is their answer. Our solution is that you should engage in conversation. We find that helps open people's minds. I'm like, I can't debate these people.
The block button is your friend.
Sometimes, I respond, but most of the time now I just ignore. The positive stuff that I do get is a lot of crazy men.
So let me, on that note, on the crazy one, because you mentioned, you know, bacon, go back to where you came from, etc. Let's not just make this an easy, oh, it's Islamophobia. As Alex highlighted, it's Muslims as well. A lot of Muslims are forgetting about any basic concept of akhlaq, behavior. They are saying and doing things online that they would never dream of doing in the real world. And number two, there's also a very sectarian climate. The Middle East crises are being imported onto social media, all of the ISIS stuff, all of the Syria stuff. What's your perspective on how you push back against that? Is there anything we can do in the real world, at conventions like this, in masajid, to really try and tackle this issue of Muslims going online and becoming crazy people? And I'm not talking about ISIS radicalization. I'm talking about normal people in this room who've gone and said and done outrageous things online.
I mean, I would hope nobody in this room's ever done that, because then I'll have to leave. But in general, I think, when it comes to the way Muslims behave, my experience is that it's the Muslims outside of the United States that are the most, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. But
Unhinged.
yeah, they're the ones that I've noticed are just totally bonkers. I mean, the men are so disgusting. They comment on everything a woman does, and nobody does anything to stop it. I never hear anything from the Muslim community, anybody saying, brothers, this is not appropriate. This isn't how you should behave. It's like, that's okay. You can comment on a woman's appearance. You can, judge her for what she's posting. You can call her all kinds of things. But, I'd never see that happening towards men. If a woman speaks, that's haram. But if a man is out there pushing himself on social media, that's okay.
Then I want to move it on the conversation.
As the recipient of, mashallah, many domestic fatwas by Muslims, I can tell you it's not just an international Muslim phenomenon. And it's not just a Muslim phenomenon, it's a human phenomenon. And this is a serious problem that people are trying to tackle, because what is digital adab? What is digital literacy? And I'll give you an example of why this is so problematic. Is growing up, like you said, we have gray hairs now. Our tweets would never have been used against us because we couldn't tweet. For our children
Thank
now,
God.
no, but our children now, think about this if you have kids. Your child's tweet, WhatsApp, Facebook post will be used against him or her in the future to get a job, or if they're running for office. It's a brave new world. And it's the wild, wild west right now. And anyone who says that we have a quick fix solution, I just came from a conference, nobody has a quick fix solution. Literally, it's like a disruptive part of the Silicon Valley right now where everyone's throwing anything on the wall to see what would stick.
The good thing is we live in a country where doing abusive tweets doesn't stop you from becoming president.
Mashallah. Takbir. No, don't
If you're not
takbir
Muslim.
But the long-term solution is this. Long-term solution is this. And this is, everyone wants a quick fix. Facebook wants it, the government wants it, counter-extremism outfits want it. What's the quick fix? And this is the long-term fix that nobody wants to hear, is that we have to teach our children in school digital literacy side by side with mathematics and
on
English.
that note about literacy, let's move the conversation forward because we're running out of time. I want to cover some other things as well. I want to talk about fake news and sources of information. Because Muslims were trading in fake news long before Donald Trump and Kellyanne Conway came in. Let's be clear. We're the
pioneers.
We're the pioneers of fake news. We got there first. So
Michael Jackson is Muslim, right?
In fact, Neil Armstrong heard Allah on the moon. You've all heard that one. Come on. You have. Let me ask you this question. Okay, serious question. Let me ask you this question. Raise your hands if in the last 12 months you have received a WhatsApp, text, or email containing images out of Syria. Okay, now put your hand down. Keep your hands up. Put your hands down if you check the source of those imagery and found out who took the picture, where it came from, when it came from. This is a problem in our community right now. We are trading in all sorts of inflammatory, divisive, controversial stuff when nothing's fact-checked. Some of you may have seen 2 days ago, there was a photo doing the rounds, and I'm the last person to be fair to Saudi Arabia. But to be fair to Saudi Arabia, there was a picture of a Saudi jet at Israel's Ben Gurion airport, which went viral. People saying, see, the Saudis have done a deal with the Israelis. And it was a fake picture, but it went viral. They circled the image. This is how quickly, quote-unquote, fake news does the rounds, especially in Middle Eastern societies, sadly, which are closed societies with no free press, and even in wider Muslim communities. So I just want to talk to you guys about, because a question I often get asked by people as a journalist is, well, where do you go for news? What do you do for sources of, how do you fact check? Alex, what's your kind of approach when you're checking out a story? Where do you start and finish in an online age?
Yeah, well, at least for our work, one thing is we actually take nothing off the internet for our information. At least when it comes to making, for example, our documentaries, our websites, or the things we post online, we are generally doing it the old-fashioned way still. Talking to real people, looking at real sources, checking once or twice or 3 times. We very rarely retweet things, that we get, because you never know. I want to say one point on this whole phenomenon, though. The good news is, in sort of a, if you're thinking about it in a sort of a certain way, is that at some point the amount of information it will just begin to be so overwhelming that I think people will need to start gravitating back to trusted sources.
Yeah.
Here's a statistic that blew my mind. I heard this the other day. From the time that the first railway train went out, it took 150 years before knowledge doubled. Before the amount of knowledge in the world, it took 150 years. By the year 2020, knowledge is going to be doubling every 7 days. Every 7 days, it's going to be twice as big as it was 7 days before. And that's all because of the internet and all the things that get posted. So at some point, it's, you're talking about the tweets live forever. You're never going to be able to find them. At some points, it's just going to be overwhelming. And I do think that those people, sources, institutions, and so forth that can position themselves.
We're going to see a rebirth, maybe.
Yes.
You're an optimist.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like I've said a lot of depressing things, and
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah,
just trying to say something positive now. I do think, just as we saw sort of yellow journalism have a rise in America in the early 20th century, when newspapers first came out, that new medium, and that all died down, I do think...
Well, we've seen every time that Trump attacks the New York Times or Vanity Fair, their subscriptions shoot through the roof.
Shoot up the roof.
Yeah.
There you go. So anyway, that's my sense.
Mariam.
I don't know, I'm a jaded journalist, so I take everything I read with a grain of salt. I think maybe a lot of people aren't aware there are the fake news sites that are out there. There are people who are just making money. I know CBS News did a whole story about a guy who he's making millions, and he's just coming up with these creative new headlines, and people click on it and they fall for it.
And he's doing left and right. He's covered the
Right.
market, right? He
Right.
He does Bernie Sanders fake news and Donald Trump
And
fake
yeah,
news.
and people just they want to believe in something, and if it's your viewpoint, you're more likely to jump on the bandwagon and retweet or repost it. For me, though, I think the other thing that I noticed working in newsrooms is the kind of news that gets covered is fluff news, and you need to dig deep on your own, or find more in-depth reporting. A lot of local news is garbage. I'm sorry, it just is. It's fires, it's murders. There's nothing of substance that really matters that you should be knowing about, that you should be aware of.
So let me take that point. You made a very good point about, and obviously a lot of national news is garbage as well. Let me take your point about being a cynical journalist who's very skeptical. And let me put that point to you, Wajahat. If you're skeptical, isn't the problem, this is my position, see if you disagree with me, in Muslim communities, I speak at a lot of events, people say, well, you can't trust CNN. You can't. You can't trust Fox News. Certainly not. You can't trust, what you read in the papers, especially on very controversial issues, the Middle East, etc. But isn't there a problem that a lot of people in the community are skeptical only in one direction? So the same people who are very skeptical of CNN will believe whatever their friend WhatsApped them about a Saudi jet in a terminal, or et cetera, Michael Jackson being Muslim, or whatever it is. How do you ensure that people are skeptical in both directions?
You can ensure. The sad part is we live in a post-truth world now.
That's depressing.
That's what it is, because I'm old enough to remember the George W. Bush administration, and he seems like a moderate saint compared to Donald Trump. In fact, George W. Bush would not be elected president because he would be seen as too pro-Muslim. That's the world we live in right now. I'm serious. And back in those days, remember, we were talking about truthiness. It's that nice mix between truthiness and some fiction. Now it's post-truth world, where we believe news that makes us feel good and confirms to our worldview, which is exactly what you just mentioned right now. I'm going to give another depressing statistic, because I went from hope here to depression. Now he's going to hope, so let's get back to depression. Gallup did a poll, they've been doing this poll for 60 years, about the public's trust in the media. 2016, September, it came out. It's the lowest that has ever been recorded, with the 32% of Americans saying they believe or trust in the accuracy or fairness of mainstream media, which means if Mehdi and Mariam spend all day fact-checking, are objective as possible, even then, only 32% of you will believe what they say. So I'm like, what's the point? I might as well just make stuff up and get paid bank, right? But what does that do to society? It erodes society. Now, I'll say something about ISIS, because, of course, I'm a Muslim at ISNA, and have to talk about ISIS. That's a joke for the government officials in the audience. Welcome, Assalamu alaikum. Obama is a Muslim. Alternative fact. ISIS, the ISIS's main recruitment and propaganda is the West is at war with Islam, right? What people don't realize is ISIS's other main goal is they want U.S. self-inflicted wounds. And they have said that Donald Trump is the biggest self-inflicted wound in America. Because what they want us to do is they want to erode civic society. They think this veneer of oh, freedom of religion and liberties and race and all that stuff is exactly that, a veneer. They think we will turn on each other, on race and religion, and divide each other. So when you have the President of the United States of America mainstreaming hate through tweets against women, African Americans, and especially who? Journalists are the enemy of the American people. Anything that goes against me is not what? A difference of opinion, it's what? Fake news. It makes you distrust facts, truth, and any opinion that you might not like, which goes back to your WhatsApp thing. It's not like, look, let's use Syria really quickly, for example. You have your opinion on Syria. I disagree with you, but I see where you're coming from. I'm very passionately against it. Now on social media, kafir, fake news, lie, propaganda, done. I'm not going to click on you. I'm going to mute you or block you, and the algorithms of Facebook and Twitter will conform to my worldview, so I will never see the opinion of someone who's from a red state or Republican or who's pro-Assad.
How do you overcome that? I want to go to the audience. I want to get some practical
How
do you overcome that?
You got to
I haven't
poke people
overcome
you
it.
don't like.
Something I've begun doing recently that's been very instructive is when I'm watching MSNBC, and they're ranting about something, I'll flip to Fox, and suddenly it's like, wow, it's like a different universe. But in just listening to Fox a little bit, when I go back to MSNBC, I begin to see the chinks in that universe as well. And I think that's, if you're asking how do we do it at an individual level, I think that's one thing, I'm just saying, that's the easiest thing to do. When you're watching your one station, flip to the other one for a little bit. And then you flip back, and suddenly you say, okay, I can see how this one's a little bit skewed as well.
And the same thing, I'm guessing you're saying, on various issues.
Various issues, exactly.
If you're a supporter of one side of a conflict, try and think about how supporters on the other side feel, and vice versa.
And vice versa, that's right. And the statistics that you're saying about not trusting the media, the truth of the matter is that when people answer that question, when you look at the deeper statistics, they have in mind Fox when they answer that question, or they have in mind MSNBC. It's not that they don't trust the media as a whole. They distrust those particular links that they see as all powerful, as driving the agenda, etc. So anyway, I'm just saying that there is actually a little more hope in that statistic than you would think. And I do believe that ultimately people just get tired of it. Right now, really social media is new. And if my son, who's 24, and is a community organizer, recently got off Facebook. And I was really questioning that. How can you be a community organizer and not be on Facebook anymore? But he was really coming at it from a spiritual point of view, and it was really illustrative to me, because this was a kid who, and I think many of us are the same way, who really lived on his likes. How many likes did I get for this last post? And at some point...
Well, we haven't even talked about the addictive part of this.
The addictive part. And at one point, he just realized he was tired of it. And he realized it was really spiritually sapping. And I think that he is an example of what all of us are beginning. Because when I realized that you wanted me to talk about Facebook, I got scared. Because I'm almost never on Facebook anymore. For the last year, I've hardly been on it.
Yeah,
for the same reason. I'm just tired of it.
But if you see that space, the problem is, let me just push back on that. It's good. Spiritually, it's good for all of us to, if you will, have a fast from social media and to have good adab, so we don't kill ourselves and other people in our community just because they have a disagreement on, like, Syria. The problem is, if you completely cede that space is being utilized very well by extremists.
Sure. And I'm not saying I'm not going to cede it. I'm just simply saying I think that the phenomenon will be people who are going to get tired of it.
And here's another fact for you all. A study by California State University found that your brain gets the same high from being on Facebook that it gets from crack cocaine.
Which is why my kids are not going to be on it until they're 21.
MashaAllah, crack addicts in the audience. There you go. All of us are crack addicts.
Before we go back to the audience, I'm very briefly starting with you, Mariam. If somebody comes to you, you're a journalist, somebody comes to you and says, Muslim, especially Muslim, let's focus on the Muslims, this is ISNA, says, I'm being overwhelmed by what's going on in the world right now. Overwhelmed. A lot of people just don't know, they can't cope with the news. It's so bad, it's so intense. When I get these stories, people text me and stuff, email me and stuff, what do I do? How do I separate fact from fiction? Give me a couple of tips.
Well, first and foremost, I think you have to take a mental health break. You have to take some time away from social media. I do that every so often. I actually was off Facebook for 9 months, and I realized that was the happiest I've ever been.
Wow.
Because there's so much negativity, and it just keeps feeding itself. But to separate fact from fiction, it can be tricky. I was almost tricked once with a tweet when they said the Queen of England died, because it said it was coming from the BBC. And then you looked closely, and it was like a fake BBC logo. So, I mean, there's no way you can be 100% confident in the sources that you get. Major news organizations get things wrong all the time. And I think the problem is people assume that journalists are these perfect human beings with no flaws, and they will always have all the facts right when that's not it. We're all, fallible. We can't have everything right all the time. So I think it's just up to you as an individual to sort of limit maybe the exposure that you get from time to time, and then when you do expose yourself to news, pick a couple of different things, as they had said earlier, a couple of different sources, and compare and contrast, and take it from there.
Wajahat, briefly.
You need critical, active engagement with the news. I'll repeat that. You need critical, active engagement with the news, just like you should critically, actively engage with your religion, just like you should critically, actively engage when you're trying to find a spouse. You just don't sit there passively and receive. And it requires a little bit more work, but our civic society literally depends on your active critical engagement. And also what they've said is exactly true. You have to come outside of your culturally isolated cocoon, both in the real world and the digital world. And that means knocking on doors and reaching across the aisle and saying, let me talk to you and let me listen to your perspective, number one. When it comes to social media, the easiest way to do it is, instead of blocking every single person you disagree with, block and mute the trolls. But do have some people on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Suppose you're a Democrat. I have Republican friends. It upsets me when they say that stuff, but add those people so their feed comes in your feed so you know what's happening. And also, don't just read Washington Post or New York Times. Go ahead and read, give me some conservative sites, which are a little bit, Daily Caller. Look what's happening at Daily Caller.
Breitbart.
Not Breitbart. Fox News, just so you know what 40% of the country's thinking, just for your curiosity. And you could drink chai and throw it at the TV, but in order to win over those people, it's not enough just to shout down at them. You have to know what they're thinking and then meet them where they are and then win them with better adab and better digital literacy.
Can I just throw this out, just to reflect on this for a minute? Okay, so I have a number of friends who really hated Obama. And one of the things that I keep going back to when I think of my knee-jerk reactions about Trump and everything that's happening with Trump, and I'm sure most people in this room may share those, but 1 week into the Obama administration, these friends of mine were like saying he's the worst president ever, he's terrible, everything he was doing in the first few weeks, the first months, they hated, they thought he was destroying America, everything that kind of we're saying on the other side. And even when I mentioned that to my friends on the other side, they always say, no, it's much different. That was all fake and, just racism and this is. But I mean, I do think that as a nation and as a country, and as moral agents, as I believe the Muslim community is, which is why I was attracted to become a Muslim in this country. As moral agents in this country, I think we have to recognize that we do live in a country that's divided. And half the country is always on the other side. And we've got to move away from, as much as possible through some of these things we're discussing, this notion of this big pendulum swing. A president wins by 80,000 votes in certain states, and now we're going to go all the way to the right. And in another election, it's going to go the other direction, and it's still going to be close. And we're going to have this thing to go all the way to the left. And we really need to try to arrive, and I'm saying this as Muslims, moral forces in this country. I think we need to be some of the folks who are pushing for a more balanced, a better, a more loving, understanding discourse, to really be the vanguard of the folks who can begin moving our country in this direction, and not, if the next election goes our way, to really want to swing everything in the opposite direction. The one thing that the Trump administration has revealed to me is that a lot of Americans actually like Muslims and are willing even to die for them, right? And that's something we should keep in mind as we focus sometimes in these panels and these discussions about the negative things, the trolls, the Islamophobes. I think we need to, again, thinking about how our brain works, we need to try to force ourselves to think about the two men who died. We need to force ourselves that the night that the travel ban was first announced, that not Muslims, but people who weren't Muslims flooded. Okay. I was flying that day. That's what we need to keep in mind when we're getting these kind of
and social media
so that we can
helped
react in a more positive way and not just react in a negative way.
Social media helped that. That's one good. Social media spontaneously brought thousands of Americans from different states in unison, unorganized, unplanned, on a weekend when the first Muslim ban dropped in January.
Okay.
So it's a tool that can be used for good as well. It depends on you.
Okay, on those passionate, eloquent, positive notes, let's go to the audience. By the way, to the government officials in the audience, I don't think Alex was asking for anyone to die on our behalf, just to clarify, but it was figuratively. Let's go to the audience and let's take some questions. Let's take them in, I'm going to take them in threes. So raise your hands and speak loudly. Gentlemen there. Just shout. Oh, there's just. Good question, short and sweet to the point. Let's have more like that. Second question. Oh, you can just do it from there.
Okay, so just was news or media ever balanced for all sides? And if it was, get back to that, i.e. how to make news critical.
Okay, and let's take a sister. Yes?
I believe as a parent, mother of three daughters, what I did with my issues with social media, thank God we didn't have so much WhatsApp and all that. I believe in insulate but not isolate.
Okay, interesting. So we've got two questions and a comment there. Let's throw them to the panel here. We'll take the first one first. Wajahat, you want to take that one? What should be our digital strategy?
Yeah, I wrote down 13 quick social media rules for all you guys that I taught journalists. In
13.
Pakistan. Yeah, 13. I wanted to, make it odd. But real quick, here we go. To be first or to be right, always choose to be right. Social media lives forever, so always think twice before tweeting or posting. Use ethics and principles always when engaging with social media, because digital life is now real life. Try to use good spelling and grammar. If you share content, cite your sources, don't be a hater. Give some love. Like if you cite Mehdi Hasan, say @Mehdi R. Hasan. Be current, topical, and relevant. Be authentic and sincere, be you. Be a human, share your personality, but don't be a troll. Engage in a conversation, number 10, but don't be afraid to cause some hangama. Number 11 again, don't be a troll. Number 12, ignoring is a response. I'll repeat that. Ignoring is a response, and I actually did a bonus. 13 is be malai, which means the cream rises to the top. If you produce consistently excellent content, the malai would rise to the top. And finally, be Bugs Bunny, not Daffy Duck. Be 2 steps ahead. Use wit, use humor, swallow your anger and pride, and you'll find out that Yosemite Sam falls in the hole that he dug for you.
Okay, well, that's the first time I've ever seen you do homework for an event. You actually brought a printed out list, neatly typed up. Alex, was the media ever balanced, and how do you get back to that?
No, I mean, the media, look, and this is something that we think a lot about in my work. The things that are facts or alternative facts or however you want to think of it are the things that fit certain narratives. Journalism always reports about the prevailing narrative. So if the prevailing narrative of a particular group is a negative stereotype, those are the things that typically are reported. It's called confirmation bias. Yeah. Same thing on a positive stereotype. So one of the things that we've always tried to address is the narratives, changing the narratives. Right. No, I don't think it's ever been balanced. I think there's always been the issue of narratives. And I think, though, that one of the things that we have a difficulty with is we're focusing so much on the weeds, on the details that we've in these posts and these tweets. Sometimes I'm just flabbergasted at how Donald Trump continually makes everyone, just determines what we're all going to be talking about, which is always something relatively insignificant compared to the big policy things that are happening. Yeah. We're not focusing on the narratives. And I want to add one last point. Yeah. And there's already been, and I'm saying this with a smile. I'm not really saying this with a negative critique. But there's already been 2 jokes on this panel about government officials being in the audience. And I've heard this already a few times as being in ISNA for 8 hours. I really think this is one of the things that we've got to, there's no government officials in this audience. We're not being spied on right now. There's no one taking notes. And it's one of those things that this environment has created fear about. It's how you're being controlled. It's your fear that's controlling you. Michael Wolff, my partner, once said to me that the only real conspiracy theory, because Muslims are, big in conspiracy theories, right, is the belief in conspiracy theories. Because if you really believe they're out to get you, and it's, again, you don't try to do anything.
Yeah, very true.
And so I would just challenge all of you, if you want to make one step in the positive direction, don't feel paranoid right now that there's people watching us. There isn't. They got bigger and better things to do than come to ISNA and see what we're doing, all right? So next time you feel that or you hear that, just take it with a grain of salt. Don't let your fear take you to that point of paranoia. Try to rise above it. Sorry.
But Allah is always watching.
Okay. Just in response, just briefly, just to the gentleman's question about going back, Wajahat mentioned the travel ban. We've been very negative about social media, I think, overall in this. You mentioned the positivity that social media played in getting people to airports, and it is a tool of organizing. It is also a tool of lobbying. I mean, one of the real ways that a lot of marginalized communities, including this one, have been able to hold the media to account for the first time is through social media. 10, 20 years ago, people like me could ignore what viewers. I could write an article and never have to worry about what people thought about it. I'm not going to read the letter to the editor. Now I get feedback in real time, literally the second it goes live. Why'd you have that headline? Why'd you start with that paragraph? And it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, and we should be able to use social media to hold mainstream media to account. When the killings in North Carolina at Chapel Hill happened, it was because it went viral and started trending that CNN started covering that story, which they weren't covering, and mainstream media
Muslims mainstreamed that story online.
So there is a potential. Mariam, do you want to come in on the first 2 points, and also, given you mentioned your kids, do you want to deal with this lady's point about insulating, not isolating?
Well, I know her, so I can't comment.
Okay, but in the general point.
That's auntie, mashallah, that's fear. That's awesome. You just shut down Mariam. Well done.
But as far as news being balanced, like Alex said, I don't think it's ever been balanced. I don't think it ever will be. The other crisis that we're facing in the news industry right now is just the cuts to the staff, the cuts to the resources. There's not enough resources, there's not enough people to do these stories. So you have like one person doing the job of 5 people in a newsroom. And so who knows what kind of stories you're going to get out of that. Which brings me to just one other point I wanted to make, which is I don't know how many of you guys were actually surprised that Donald Trump won. I had spoken with a colleague a few weeks before the election. I said, he's going to win. The reason? Because I had spoken with Muslims a week before that said, oh, we're voting for him. And when I heard Muslims were voting for him, I was like, it's over.
One in 10 Muslims voted for Donald Trump. That is true.
And so, and
I know 2.
Were you one of them?
No, 2. No.
He says.
No.
Well, he says 10%, but the number is 10.
Was I one of them? Thank God I'm an immigrant. I can't vote in your absurd elections.
10
right
to
now.
15% of
Electoral
American Muslims.
college. What the hell is the electoral college, by the way? Anyways, okay, let's go back to the audience. Take 3 more questions. We're running out of time. That was good. The first one was good. Brief. Gentleman standing up there. I think I know his name. Saeed. Go.
So how do we move the narrative back from journalism being a source of entertainment to a source of knowledge? And Wajahat, only Desis know about Malay, so how about for number 13 making it Malay?
Making it what? What was your 13 be? A Labne. God, Arab-Indian row starting now over social media strategy.
Thank you for the fitness, Saeed.
Second question. Yes, sister here.
Thank you for your 13 tips. I like them, but on a higher, bigger picture, how do we change the level of discourse?
Okay.
Flatten out the
Outside of social media, across the board, as Alex mentioned, you talking about? The discourse is the question. How do we change the discourse?
within social media. How do you flatten out the echo chamber?
Okay. And let's take another one. Gentlemen standing up here.
Sister Mariam said, check out the fake news. What is the source? How do you check out the fake news? There was a news on the WhatsApp. A Saudi prince lost millions of dollars in Cairo and lost his 5 wives.
I mean,
Takbir?
I mean, let him find his wives and you do something, you read something else.
Do
maybe.
dua for him, I guess. I don't know.
Dua, I mean,
well, first of all, at least for me, I never trust anything that comes on WhatsApp.
yeah.
Ever. I mean, the weirdest things come through there. And then there are the conspiracies that there are some links, if you open them, you can be spied on your phone. So don't open the WhatsApp.
I always love my favorite one, which started on email, now is on WhatsApp, is forward this on and 100 du'as will be done for you. And I'm like, really? Did Allah really need WhatsApp to get his message across before? Really? What did
The Wahis would have come in WhatsApp.
How did
in the 7th
Revelation
century.
work prior to WhatsApp? You must forward this on if you want to go to heaven. Okay. Alex, do you want to deal with any of the questions? We had a question there about how do we get back, if possible, from Saeed. We had a similar question there. The second question that came up,
Okay, well,
the discourse question, which is
for the gentleman's
slightly linked.
question, how do you know it? I just say wait 24 hours because these things disappear.
That's a
The
very
fake
good point.
news things just go away. So don't be, oh my God,
That's
quick
so
to
true.
retreat.
There is a speed thing to this. Everyone wants to be first.
Yes.
I don't know who's Desi here in the hall, by the way. Like literally the day before Eid, WhatsApp started knocking around saying Dilip Kumar is dead, which upset my dad, who's a massive Dilip Kumar fan. And my dad messaged him, and I went on Twitter, and he was tweeting from the official blue-ticked Dilip Kumar Twitter account. I'm like, he's alive, all right? He's alive, he's tweeting.
They also killed Mark Hamill.
But I don't know why people get such pleasure in killing people off. Who starts these rumors? What kind of weirdo do you have to be to, day before Eid, Dilip Kumar is dead, I'll send it round.
Now, I'll say one other thing, just to, to bring a tool to you all. We have just launched a website called reach100million.com, reach100million.com, with the goal of reaching 100 million Americans with the narrative of Muslims as contributors to this society. So the goal is to reach half the adult population in America, and all of you can participate in that by just going to the website and doing what the website, that's our website,
Okay.
Reach 100 million, as a way of just trying to affect or impact the narrative.
Okay, Wajahat, deal with Said's question.
Look, at the end of the day, be the protagonist of the America that you want to see. At the end of the day, we're just individuals, all right? And like a group of people can make a change. I'm so glad you made the Chapel Hill reference. I remember that. It was late at night, 2 a.m. I was in D.C. working for Al Jazeera America. Mainstream media did not capture it. A small group of students in North Carolina decided to make that trend. Okay, and then the way they did it from beginning to the campaign itself was done with adab, class, goodness, and strategy. And look, it made an international ripple. When it comes to people trying their best to do something good, I'll give you a great example of how social media and Muslims use social media for responsibility. Ayman Mohyuddin is on MSNBC, is an American Muslim journalist of Egyptian descent, very respectable, was in Gaza. Because he tweeted something which allegedly was, but some people said was biased, even though he had impeccable journalistic ethics and credentials. They pulled him out of Gaza, and all of a sudden, who went in instead? Engel, who's very respected. But all of a sudden, now you have Richard Engel, like a white guy, and Ayman's out. Muslims, I've never seen this happen before. I'm like, wow, this is a game changer. Muslims in particular said, we want Ayman back, let Ayman back in, #campaign. He's a good journalist, do an audit of him, he did nothing wrong. Within 3 days, Ayman was back. Okay, so do not underestimate the power of individual to have good adab and good strategy and then coalesce their social networks for good. You cannot control Washington Post, you cannot control New York Times or Fox News, you cannot control Donald Trump, but what you can do, and I'm glad Alex said this and I said this also, is if it's better to be first or be right, be right. Take some time, and drink your chai before retweeting. And maybe take that WhatsApp image, and this is what I always do, last thing I'll say. I got that same WhatsApp image from a very well-known individual. I looked at it, I'm like, I don't buy it. I'll take a moment. I Googled it, didn't find the source. I said, probably bakwas. I said bakwas in my head. Bakwas, Saeed Saab is called nonsense. For those of you who don't speak Urdu, why? How can you not speak Urdu in Chicago? I'm kidding. And at the end of the day, and the final thing I'll say is this, when it comes to disruption on social media, never underestimate this. If you see a trolling thread on Facebook, this is what a disruption looks like. One comment disrupting the negative flow. One comment pushing back. One comment saying, excuse me, bully, I don't buy that. What's your source? One comment saying, why did you just bully this sister? And that one comment is a slap in the face of the bully sometimes on social media that changes the tone in discourse and empowers the flabby moderate majority.
So the sisters asked about discourse. I'm glad you touched that because obviously it's not just about lobbying, it's about changing the tone. One of the positive things we should celebrate, I mean, in the last year since we were all here together in Chicago, there was Tariq and Linda's campaign for the cemetery, which was heavily energized by social media. The money would not have been able to come in if social media did not exist. We wouldn't be writing checks and mailing it to places if you didn't have GoFundMe pages, etc. And I think positive discourse, I think Wajahat's right to make the point, we so negatively, we want to respond to fire with fire. Actually, we can, and Alex made the point earlier, we can be the moral agents who set a positive example. You know, I say this as a journalist, I always encourage people, go home, lobby your local media, write complaints, put pressure when things like the NBC thing happen, but also recognize good work as well. We're so negative, we only see bad. When you see an article you like, when you see a story that you agree with, when you see a film you really appreciate, reach out, praise the people, celebrate it, show some positivity, encourage those people to do more good work, because journalists, Muslim and non-Muslim, are human beings. They have the same egos, the same feelings, the same thin skins as everyone else. Let's take one last round of 3 questions as quickly as we can. Yes, the sister there was waiting from before. This is a good question. This is a great question. Okay, let's take gentleman there. Yes, down the row. Yep. I'll repeat it. Go-
all these shit Google, half the time you have to check their references, make sure that they have
Very good point.
Muslims, by general, do not check any of these guys out. They take them verbatim. Oh, he must be correct. He has beard, whatever. He says something there about not. If we don't police ourselves, trust me, people are going to say, your sheikh said it on Google.
Yeah.
It's a record. It's permanent. And to argue against them forever, that, Fox News Hannity had our famous British imam who comes and screams that Sharia should be implemented in Britain. What are you going to say against him? You say he's not a scholar?
I think, okay, so the question there, and I'm going to pause for a second because it was a good question, was something we haven't really touched on in the time because of time and probably because none of us are alims, but the question about Sheikh Google, which I think we've all had that phrase, the idea of going online and finding fatwas, looking up Islamic law, which has both democratized knowledge in the community, I think is a good thing, but on the other hand has led to some dodgy people getting a lot of influence that they may not have had back in the old days. And I think your point is, how do we police ourselves, especially online, when people are saying things without fact-checking? We don't fact-check news stories. We also don't fact-check religious fatwas. People say, this is haram, I heard it, and we don't know, it's not haram, you've just made something haram based on nothing. I think that's a very fair point. I think your Anjum Chowdhury example is not the best example because he was repudiated by all British Muslims, I can say that as a British Muslim, and yet, of course, Fox News and the Daily Mail still want to give him a platform. Although, you're right, I mean, checking qualifications is so important. I don't know if people on the panel have a tip. I don't know, again, Wajahat's already got himself banned from ISNA. I may now get myself banned from ISNA, but who saw the tweets about the Saudi guy and Rihanna, and the Saudi cleric who responded? Anyone here see the Saudi cleric who said it's not zina because he has to get to fourth base in order for it to be zina? That was a quote-unquote cleric on Twitter giving his opinion on the new relationship out of the Middle East. Let's take a third question, then I'll get you all to respond to all three. One last one. Waving there, sister. Oh, you were waving on behalf of someone else. Ah, clever. Clever move.
Good encouragement.
So this is just a comment for Alex as a follow-up. I very much like your point about how, in order to combat confirmation bias and what social media does for that and how it extends it, you need to look at both sides of the story. I want to bring a little bit of negativity, though, to it.
Briefly, because we're running out of time.
I don't think most people are capable of doing that. I don't think most people are going to go out of their way to be looking at the opposite side of the spectrum. Do you have any advice for how to encourage more people to do that?
Okay, Alex, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, so this just goes to my theory or my thesis here, which is that, when I said that I do it, I don't do it just because I'm trying to be smart or better. I did it just because I was just getting tired of hearing a certain kind of rant, and I got curious of what the other rant is. I think that, again, that as a society, social media is new. And we're experiencing all these amazing things, and we're getting all these dopamine highs from likes and so forth. But as that peak begins to go, and the reason I mentioned my son was he seemed to be, kind of the foreground of somebody who was very engaged in social media and now is pulling back. I think that we just naturally are going to move to the pendulum is going to swing. I believe that people will start doing that without us having to prompt them, but begin to do it just because they'll need to. I'm only prompting you because, again, I'm just saying I believe in the moral power of this community, and that, the thing that makes American Muslims great is to look beyond just the Muslim part and look at the American part and make it better. And I think all of us, at least in this room, can begin doing that and be a vanguard of that process.
Mariam, do you want to touch on the other two?
And I don't intend to get banned from ISNA, by the way. You guys are off. I'm still here.
Okay.
It was fun while it lasted, guys.
I've got a speech tonight at 9 o'clock, and then I'm gone for good. The shameless self-plug. Mariam, do you want to touch on the two other questions about a lot of people don't understand how newsrooms work. Where, do you have a supervisor? Was a nice blunt way of putting it. And the cold religious scholarship, which we didn't have time to get into, and we've only got 2 minutes left. But what's your take on the kind of Sheikh Google angle to this whole debate?
Okay, so as far as how newsrooms work, it depends. I've worked in different ones. One where there were like 3 people on top of you, like you do your story, they'd correct it, somebody else would time it, they'd look over it. And more recently, I worked in a newsroom where you're just the only person, and it goes on the air, and if you pronounce something wrong, it's too late. It's already out there. So you've got to be your own advocate. You've got to double-check your sources. We do have some things like LexisNexis we might use to double-check that the person's who they say they are. Every now and then, you'll get someone totally crazy. But the good thing, if you are a Muslim in a newsroom and you know somebody is totally nuts, I will just say, I'm not gonna interview them. We shouldn't put them on the air. So you can kind of advocate in that way. As far as the internet and people taking fatwas off of there, it's one of my biggest pet peeves because people will come up, for example, women shouldn't wear pants. I went on islamqa.com and I got that answer there. Not a reputable source. I don't care what anybody says, that's not a reputable source. So you just need to go to somebody, I guess, in your community, someone that you can trust that's from this society, that understands things, before you trust anything online.
I accept all fatwas, even American Express, so tweet at me, all your fatwas, and I'm gonna answer all of them in basic principles, especially with Muslim communities, right? If you wanna be treated respectfully, you have to act respectfully. If you want to be treated like a professional, you have to act professional. If we don't self-audit our own communities and our imams and thought leaders, then other people will judge us and take us not seriously. They'll say that we're clowns. We're not morally consistent, we're hypocrites. And a lot of people look at us and say, wow, you guys are clowns. Look at the people you promote. You don't even fact check your imams who are giving fatwas about fourth bases and Rihanna, okay? And people are paying attention specifically to our clerics and our religious authorities. So hold ourselves to the highest standard and hold ourselves to the highest professional standard and etiquette at ISNA, when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to our communities. Act like a professional, be treated like a professional, and people will eventually respect you. When it comes to storytelling, I'm glad you mentioned this. When it comes to Muslims, eventually it's usually Daffy Duck. Whine, complain, victimhood, blah, 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 woe is me, no one cares. No one cares. But if you provide a positive solution or a response that is authentic, then people listen. I'll give you two quick examples. Everywhere I've gone across the country, amongst Jewish circles, people paid attention to the Launch a Good campaign, where Muslims raised money for the defaced synagogues, proactively, which was done through social media. On Eid, hashtag Blackout Eid was a top 10 trending trending thread in America, where African American Muslims took photos of how they were celebrating Eid. It was positive, there was bling, there was kids, there were smiles, and so many Americans were like, oh my God, look at Eid and Ramadan, it's trending. And when you looked at Eid and Ramadan, the positive narratives of American Muslims who acted as protagonists of their own narrative drowned out all the trolls. And Americans, and not just Americans, but people all around the world said, oh wow, this is what they do on Ramadan and Eid. So don't underestimate the power of you to be the protagonist of a narrative, and don't forget that a tweet, an Instagram post, a Facebook post is a story. Be that storyteller.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we're going to wrap up. I want to thank you all for coming to this event. There's going to be many more panels during the day. Be positive online, I think is the fair to say. My only one advice on fake news is, if it's too good to be true, it isn't true. That's my history of dealing with these stories.
Very British of you, Mehdi. Thank you.
Just sorry to be, that's my only advice. But let's give a big round of applause to this panel for coming here today. Thank you.
That was the best panel I've ever been on. You did an amazing job. That was really,
I'm Amina's mother. Amina Wahid's mother.
Alex, thank you very much. You know why I listened to you very
And she grew up in front of me. Her neighbors.
Oh, thank you.
We didn't talk about Link TV.
Thank you.
We talked about.
My daughter is also in media.
I love Amy Goodman. She's
TV
good.
station.